Residential fires can be devastating to families, even if there are no injuries or fatalities. But too often, they are deadly, and many of these fires are preventable. Joining me now in studio to discuss fire prevention is Troy Hicks. He's the Fire Prevention Officer with the City of Lethbridge Fire Department. Welcome to BCN.
Thanks for having me.
So Troy, every spring we're reminded to change the batteries in our smoke alarms. How many of us actually do that?
I'd like to think the numbers are getting better and better every year. We really go out with getting the message out there with the public of the importance of changing batteries. We get phone calls every year. People are amazed. They call us and tell us that their smoke detectors are beeping. And when I say to them, or any of our members say to them to change the batteries, they're like, no, they're hardwired. They don't take batteries. 90% of the ones that are hardwired take batteries as well in case of a power outage.
Battery backup, right?
Battery backup, absolutely. So yeah, it is getting a lot better. We get phone calls quite a bit. People just ask us the questions, what means they're thinking, and hopefully it makes it happen.
When I was a kid, there were fire detectors and smoke detectors. Are there still both, or just
negative? No, now it's a smoke detector. They go by many different names. We have smoke detectors, smoke alarms, fire detectors. The detectors in your home are smoke detectors. There is combination detectors as well. You'll have a combination smoke and carbon monoxide detector, which they meet CSA standards and they work as well.
What about carbon monoxide detectors? I have one at every floor of my house. I've got a bi-level, one up, one down. Is that necessary?
Carbon monoxide is heavier than air, so it would settle. It will go down to the basement. Depending on the type of appliances you have in your home, that'll give you your risk of your carbon monoxide. So any natural gas appliances. If you live in a home with an attached garage, and there's always the risk of running your car in your garage, hopefully with your door open, start it and then back out. But there is that risk that the carbon monoxide from the garage can come inside. So ideally, you want one on that level for sure. I have an upstairs, our main floor in a basement. Mine is downstairs, close to my furnace room, and that's where I keep it.
My wife's always concerned about buying a house with an attached car garage. In case something happens with the car, catches on fire, it's attached to the house is going to go up. Or an detached car garage in the backyard, you stand a better shot of getting out of the house. What are your thoughts?
You know what, with an attached garage, if they're built by code, they're actually fire separated from the garage into the house.
Okay.
Obviously, the risk is still high, and we do respond to a lot of garage fires that do eventually spread into the home. Lots of those, the main damage we get is that the person door that goes from the garage into the home itself, that has been wedged open. Or incidents where someone will smell a fire, smell smoke, they open up their person door, they look into the garage, they see the smoke, and without even thinking, they hit the garage bay door opener. That rush of oxygen just causes the fire to grow immensely, and then that's how it gets out of control.
It feeds it, right?
Absolutely. Fire needs oxygen to keep on burning, and a fire just wants to burn. It wants to eat up everything that's in its path and continue to go. So if we can have those doors, anyone with an attached garage, make sure that door closes, the person door going to and from, make sure it closes on its own, and it should latch. If it doesn't latch, have a look. WD-40 can fix the problem. Or if there's another issue, call someone in to have a look at it, but that door should always be closed.
What are some of the common house fires? We've covered a few stories here on Bridge City News in Lethbridge about common house fires. Some were people smoking in their bed, smokers falling asleep. What are some of the common reasons for house fires today that we're seeing?
The number one cause of fire we get in the city of Lethbridge is cooking fires.
In the kitchen?
In the kitchen, cooking fires, unattended cooking. People are busy. Sometimes we just don't pay attention.
So you can't really turn the burner down and leave the house? You should always make sure.
No. And we just went through Thanksgiving. We have Christmas coming up in another month. We'd like to remind people, when that turkey goes in the oven, I am not saying grab a chair and sit in front of your oven for the 4 hours and stare at it. But don't leave your house. If you're cooking, someone needs to be there. And you need to be paying attention. No different than barbecue fires. When we have a barbecue fire, I'm a firm believer of the only time a barbecue is clean when it's in the box at the store. Once it's used a few times, there is the risk. I'm not saying it's going to catch on fire, but there's always the risk it could, depending on what you're cooking. Check it. I have a 18-year-old son that I just recently, over the last couple of years, let to start barbecue. I've taught him, cook on low heat, go out and check it every couple minutes, and just then there's no risk.
Barbecues, what about fireplaces? We've got Christmas just around the corner. It's getting cooler outside, there's snow, We've got
with fireplaces in people's homes, chimneys should be cleaned every year, guaranteed. Another thing as well with fireplaces is the same thing. Don't overload your fireplace. If your house is cold, put a sweater on. Make sure you're putting that. Read the instructions with your fireplace. Burn the proper amounts of what's supposed to be inside. Make sure it's like I said, the chimney's clean, and make sure you're watching your safety distances around. Fireplace needs to be installed properly. It needs to have proper safety distances. We all remember growing up drying mittens and toques and stuff on the fireplaces or even on the kerosene heaters, which luckily aren't being used that often anymore. You don't want to put too much combustible stuff like gloves, toques on top of a fireplace. There's always a risk that if you forget about them, they could catch on fire with the heat.
What about some of these prefabricated logs? I've been told sometimes in the past when it comes to wood-burning fireplaces, just burn the wood. Don't put those in because there's a lot of chemicals that are released into the flue, into the chimney.
You know, I don't really know enough about them to really say if they'd be safe or not. I know they meet standards. One thing, if we continue to talk about things meeting code and meeting standards, I want to remind people as well is make sure they buy stuff Canadian, make sure they buy stuff that's CSA approved or ULC approved. That means it's been tested to Canada standards, and therefore it is safe to be used in any appliance here in Canada. Ordering things online, lots of people like to order stuff online, shop online, things like that. Pay attention where you're ordering from to make sure they actually do meet Canadian standards.
What should we talk to kids about when it comes to fire hazards in our homes? Outside of don't play with matches and lighters, right?
Absolutely. You know, we always go through the old sayings of stop, drop, and roll. If their clothes catch on fire, we always talk about the get low and go. When I do presentations at schools, by the end of the day, my knees are sore from crawling around the floor with the kids. And what we mean by that is fire departments all over North America highly recommend for people to sleep with their bedroom doors closed tight, regardless of age.
And why is that?
It'll keep all the smoke and heat on the other side. So we teach children, and you know we should be teaching adults as well, that if they ever hear their smoke detectors go off, if their door is closed, they just touch the door with the back of their hand, make sure it's not too hot, and open their door. If there's smoke in their hallway, don't panic. The air down below is still nice and cool and is safe to breathe. Get down low, get on their hands and knees, and crawl to their closest exit to get out. If they're sleeping with their door closed and they open their door and the fire is right there, well then they can keep that door closed. Get to their window, make sure someone knows they're there. Almost everybody, kind of regardless of age now, from about 10 up, has a cell phone. Most people take their cell phones to bed with them. If they're trapped in the room, then that's when they can call the fire department and let us know, and then that's when we respond to a call, that's the first place we're going.
How about escape routes when it comes to our homes?
You should have at least two. I am not a believer of, a lot of kids say to me all the time, oh, I'd break my window and jump out. No, that's just opening up another risk. We don't want that. So you need to have two ways out of your home. If you're coming out of your bedroom, you've got a front door or a back door. If your bedroom is in a basement, then your basement windows should be legal size, which means they are escape size in order to be able to get out in the event of an emergency. So we always tell people make sure they have two ways out, front door, back door, instance like that, as well as always having a meeting place. In the event of an emergency, 9 times out of 10 it happens in the evenings or at night. There's chaos, people are scared, they're confused. So if we practice these home safety drills with our families, people know where to go. And whether it's at a neighbor's yard, somewhere's a big tree that's beside the house, somewhere's where everyone will know where to go, they can stay there, they're safe, they could call 911 from there or from a neighbor's house, and the fire department can get there.
When it comes to fire extinguishers, Troy, are a lot of them the same, that they can attack grease fires, electrical fires, wood-burning fires?
Fire extinguishers there's 5 classes of fire. They go A, B, C, D, and K. The fires we're going to have in our homes are ABC fires. A Class A fire is an ordinary combustible fire. So think of A for the word ash. What turns into ash? Wood, cardboard, paper, leaves, things like that. You can use water to put it out. A Class B fire is a flammable liquid fire. So at a home, that would be considered a grease fire. When we talk about in a restaurant with deep fryers and grills, that is a Class K fire. It's just a liquid foam that is in the Class K extinguishers that smothers the grease. We don't need one of them for our home. The grease fires you're going to have at home are not that large, so an ABC fire will work. And when we get to a Class C fire, it's an electrical fire. There's going to be power to it. Obviously, you don't use water on electrical fire. So these fire extinguishers, there's a dry chemical that's inside. It's mostly baking soda, and that's what smothers the fire and puts it out.
How often should we check our fire extinguishers?
We should check our extinguishers at home annually. Have a look at them. You should be making sure that if you have a fire extinguisher with a pressure gauge, your pressure gauge is in the green, not above or below. You need to have a pin and a safety seal that holds that pin in. It helps keep the pressure inside the extinguisher. And then you should tip it upside down. When you tip it upside down, you should feel the weight of the powder move. Sometimes what happens is it's like putting flour in a Tupperware container. It settles. So you might just need to bang it on the sides with your hand to loosen up the extinguisher to make sure the powder moves around. And then you can have a look at the date on the bottom. If your extinguisher is more than 10 years old, it needs a hydrostatic test. So then it does need to be sent away to be tested. But if it's within your 10 years, everything's fine.
What about sprinkler systems? Are they still quite common in today's modern homes?
We are in the process, and we have been for years, of trying to implement domestic sprinklers. There's not a lot of homes in the city of Lethbridge now that have them. Some communities in Alberta have brought them in. I know actually there is sprinklered homes in Paradise Canyon that have been brought in. They work on domestic water, and they are very safe. They work very well in your homes.
Now, Christmas is just around the corner. A lot of people are very excited about it. Some people like to put the little sparklers on their trees, even candles, old school, on the Christmas trees. What are some of the concerns or safety concerns we should really let our families know about when it comes to Christmas?
When it comes to Christmas, especially with Christmas and fire, candles, thankfully a lot of people are getting away from candles. We don't respond to as many candle fires as we used to. One thing we do respond to almost every year at Christmas is at least one Christmas tree fire, whether that's a fake tree, artificial tree, or a real tree. I'll talk about artificial trees first. The issues lots of times we have with them is people keep their Christmas lights for years. Right. And you set them up, at the end of the year, you roll them into a ball, jam them into the box, and you put them away. Well, that kind of tension on your electrical cords and the lights can cause them to damage. And if there's damage, that's going to heat up, and that could catch your tree on fire. When it comes to a real Christmas tree, it's so important. One, don't decorate your house 6 weeks before Christmas with a real tree.
Of course.
You have to keep them watered all times.
So sometimes the dog goes and gets something to drink,
absolutely.
right?
So you need to be paying attention. If you're seeing a puddle of water on the floor, top that up. Just try to keep your dog away. Of a real Christmas tree being dried out, there's training videos all over the internet that by the time a spark happens, that tree is fully involved in under 10 seconds. It's gone. Wow. And now the living room is on fire. So if you are going to use a real tree, pay attention where you're placing it. Don't have it too close to any heat sources. If you have a fireplace, beautiful picture, but you want to keep it away from your fireplace. If you have electric heat or anything like that, you just need to be very careful that you're not presenting any heat sources that could be a risk of that tree catching on fire.
What about artificial trees, Troy? Do they have an expiration date? Let's say after maybe 10 or 15 years, they maybe start to break down, the material becomes more flammable perhaps?
With artificial trees, I think the only risk that could happen then is the older they get, the more they start falling apart. To say it'd be a fire risk, no, I don't believe so. But you're going to have stuff all over your floor. You're going to have the risk of other things like that. You're just adding more combustibles to your living room or wherever you do have your tree set up, that there could be the risk of the fire growing larger than it would be if you have a nice proper tree.
Let's talk about the opioid crisis, which is taking place in our city and many cities across the country right now. I've talked to other people with EMS, and they say that resources are being stretched thin. Some people are on long-term disability, and you can't keep up. You can't keep coping up like what's happening with the safe consumption site at Arches and just the opioid crisis around the city itself. Tell me about what you're experiencing firsthand.
Those of us in prevention, we don't experience much with the opioid crisis. We educate as much as we can. We do presentations just about fire safety and any safety education within the city. We are training the people that work in these places like Arches. We offer training to them for fire extinguishers or any other type of fire safety. And the Fire Prevention Bureau itself, mostly any dealings we have with the safe injection site is just doing the annual fire inspections, making sure the building is safe as far as fire is concerned and going from there.
What about ice safety? We've got the Old Man River, we've got Henderson Lake. Let's talk a bit about that.
We have
protecting our families, right?
Absolutely. We've already had, we had a dog rescue a couple weekends ago on one of the lakes around here. The thing is we need to remember about Lethbridge is it does get cold. The snow comes in, and almost as fast as the snow melts, that's how fast it gets into the ground and it dries up. We all love the Chinook winds that melts the snow, but also dries out the ground. So if there's any ice on the lakes or on the rivers, it's going to melt very fast. We need to be careful. Really recommend for the citizens and the public to pay attention on any risks and the ice thickness notifications that go out. If the city says it's not safe, they're not doing it just to try not to allow you to have some fun. It's because it's not safe, and we need to keep people off there. And what people need to remember as well is if they're not watching their dog down by the Old Man River or Henderson Lake, and that dog gets on the ice, the fire department's coming to save that dog just as we were a child or a person or an adult. However, we're now putting the risk of our firefighters' lives as well for something that's so simple to prevent. Keep an eye on your dog, keep them on a leash, keep them safe. Your kids, educate them to stay off the ice unless you're told it's safe. And the city marks signs when it is safe to go skating. Henderson Lake, for example, when it's safe for them to go skating, they will go out and they clear the snow to make room for people to skate. So just pay attention to any city social media, and it'll let people know when it is safe to be out there.
A lot of common sense, right?
Absolutely. Common sense is something that we all need more of.
Absolutely.
And can continue to use for sure.
Troy Hicks, Fire Prevention Officer with the City of Lethbridge Fire Department. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.